But we want to talk about the spiritual discipline of secrecy this morning. Listen to the words that Matthew wrote and Jesus spoke. Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And the idea is that he would reward you openly. But the reality in these few verses is that during the time of Christ, before the time of Christ, and after the time of Christ, and even today, there is such a thing as spiritual hypocrisy. Religion is full of hypocrites. I'm going to need help today. Spiritual hypocrisy is the very reason why secrecy can be called a spiritual discipline. God sees what is done in private and then has commissioned to reward openly. But when we advertise our thoughts, our activities, oh my goodness, we kind of hang it out there. We live in a century or an era of human history with a cultural trend and technology where we post everything on global social networks and show almost, well, in cases, everything. We like to tell what we do and where we're at, how we feel, and what we think. And that's not necessarily wrong. But sometimes people are looking for affirmation. People are looking to be validated. And what certifies you and gives confirmation to what you're doing? And if it's the people that follow you on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok, I would be concerned. I would ask that you might be concerned. You know, I heard something the other day. I wasn't looking for this, but I heard something in one of the, it was a psychologist and was on some kind of a panel, and they were talking about young people and how many of the states here in the United States now are developing laws where they're asking and actually, challenging parents to forbid giving their children phones because of the emotional damage that comes from posting things online and you don't even know what you're going to get back. And so when you don't get validated or affirmed, you end up with addictive emotional trauma. Why don't they like me? Why don't they understand me? Why can't I connect? And so here's the idea, I think, in Matthew's statement. Some things are private. Some things ought not be publicly known. In your responsive reading, Matthew put it like this in chapter 5, you are already the light of the world. That's who you are. This is what God made you. And there's a principle concept about visibility that comes with being the light of the world. In fact, if God is in you and God has empowered you, if God is building you, then you are that city that's been set on a hill. You are that God-empowered light. And I got news for you. Your light can never be hidden. When God is building your house, when God has lit your life up, your life will never be dull. It will never be hidden. We know this principle from our series of Come and See and discipleship, development, and spiritual transformation. We know that when Jesus started preaching, it was okay when he was preaching, but when he started performing miracles, from the day he turned that water into wine, things changed. People started following him everywhere that he went. People would hear that he's in town, and they would want to come see him. People would come, and they wouldn't even pack food. Jesus is going to work it out. Fish sandwiches today, y'all. Jesus is in town. Jesus and his disciples got to the place where it was hard to have privacy. So they would hide from the crowds. They would hide from them. If you go back and you read Mark chapter 7 and verse 24, Jesus went to the town of Tyre, trying to get away from the crowds. Went to somebody's house, Mark doesn't say, went to a house in Tyre. Listen, I just need a break. He goes in there and sits down. A little while later, a woman, Mark describes her as a Gentile woman who comes into the home. I always find these kind of details important because it doesn't give you a lot of information. How do you end up at somebody's house? Potentially you don't know because you heard Jesus was there, and you don't worry about the homeowner or invading their privacy. Jesus is there. I got a public right to see Jesus. I'm going to see him. Mark just simply says the woman comes into the house, finds Jesus sitting there, walks up to him, starts a conversation. I need your help. My daughter is possessed with a demon. I need your help. Jesus, I could just see him in my mind, wipe his brow. Listen, you're in my space. If it were 21st century, right? You're all up in my face. She tells him, my daughter is sick. My daughter's possessed. My daughter is overwhelmed with a spirit. I need your help. And Jesus comes to the brink of almost, in my mind, humiliating the woman, embarrassing and disrespecting her by telling her, listen, you can't expect to get the food off the table that was meant, the bread of life that was meant for the house of Israel, because you are a Gentile and I came to the house of Israel first. He's telling her, you're a Gentile. You can't expect me to spend time ministering to you. I'm ministering to Jews only. And you would almost believe that that woman's heart would just be broken. It didn't faze her a bit. She told him just as fast as he told her, listen, I know how it goes in the house. When the children eat, those kids don't eat with dignity. They eat and food falls to the floor. And even the dogs crawl under the table and eat the morsels of food off the floor that the children drop. And all of a sudden, Jesus decided it doesn't matter that I'm trying to catch a break. Doesn't matter that I need a moment to catch my breath and I'm hiding and trying to escape. I'm in a private place trying to get a little time off. I see your faith. I hear the passion and the desire in your soul. Go home, child. That baby's delivered. That little girl's healed. Because something in her connected with him. No matter what was said, I'm not here to worry about being embarrassed. I need help. And I need to get that help right now. I want you to consider this. I want to read it for you again. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. I want to read it again for you because it's relevant to where I'm going in this concept of secrecy. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify God who is in heaven. I got a suggestion for you. I know that TikTok, I don't know anything about TikTok, whatever it is. I technically don't know anything about it. Y'all, some of the teenagers need to help me out, enlighten me. Come on, Bentley, help a brother out. I don't know about a lot of these other social platforms. But what if, in fact, not just for kids and not for young people, but what about churches? What if God was our public relations director? What if you looked at God not just as somebody who sits out on the edge of the universe, but somebody who's intimately connected with me and involved in my life, knows my circumstances, understands my situation, and cares about me? What if you knew God in such a way that you could give everything and trust everything in your life to Him? You didn't have to tell nobody else, because I'm going to tell God what's going on in my life. What if your faith was as such that you allow God to publish you? What would it look like if God was your marketing director? Churches need to hear that. What if God was your strategic planner, your advertisement strategist? What if God had such a hold over your life you weren't worried about today and certainly not tomorrow? Because I know Him and He knows me and He's got my back. What would it look like? You see, I think that's the connection when it comes to spiritual secrecy. The discipline about secrecy is simply this, that the idea of being able to entrust what's going on with my life to God has everything to do with my knowledge of His love for me. And if I understand that, and I am reciprocating His love that He is profusely given to me and allowed it to transfer to others, then secrecy applies. Because now I'm not worried. Now I'm not fretting. Now I can be buoyant. I can be encouraged. Even in difficult times or difficult experiences, I can stand up because I know who God is. I know something about Him. This, I think, makes Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3 possible. Paul tells the Philippian church, don't do anything from empty or selfish conceit. Don't act selfishly. Do not act unrational. He says, don't do that. Here's how you work. Here's how you live. Live with humility of mind and regard others as more important than yourself. How do I get to that place, Pastor? Isn't that just theology? No, that's life application. When you get to that place that God is your marketing manager, when God is your strategist, when God is your advertisement strategist, you can trust Him. You can trust Him. Listen to this. In verse 6 of Matthew 6, we didn't read this, but it says this. But you, when you pray, go into your inner room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. He says, you disciples, you believers, when you pray, don't go out in the middle of the street and decide, I'm going to talk about Jesus. Need $50, Lord. When what you really want is somebody in the crowd to give up $50. I need help. I know I ain't going to make it. I'm in trouble already, Dave. Sarcastic, but reality. The spiritual hypocrites of Jesus' day would go out into the streets, into the marketplace, and stand there and audibly give their prayers so that people could hear the eloquence of their words. And call that spiritual. And Jesus says, that's not right. That's not right. When you come to the seasons, and I say seasons in your life, when you have difficulty, when you have trauma, when you have opposition, you have got to learn the principle of secrecy as it relates to prayer. Because these are the times when you have to know that what I share with God in private, God has heard, God sees, God hears, God knows. And He will answer. And you know what'll happen? Before you go tell anybody, you'll start developing the discipline that I'm going to talk to my God first. I know I got 1,000 folk on Twitter, but I ain't telling them nothing until I talk to Jesus. I'm going to tell Jesus what my concerns are, because that's where my help comes from. I want you to consider this now. If you start learning how to talk to God about your life, about your circumstances, and you have the confidence that God hears your prayer, here's what I want you to think about. What would it look like if God, as your marketing director, decides, I heard you, brother, I heard you, son, I heard you, sister, but I got some other folk over here, I'm going to move on them. And all of a sudden, God starts moving on people's lives. And somebody calls you, somebody stops by your house. You haven't said a word to anybody but God. But God has been preparing somebody's heart over here to do good works. Somebody over here has been asking God, God, what do you want to do in my life? Can you use me, Lord? Can I benefit you, God? Can I fit into the church? Can I work? Can I accomplish something that will give you honor and give you glory? And here you are on your knees. And God's listening to your prayers and all the time raising somebody up, so that they can sow a seed. And in that seed, God get the glory. And when those who are crying for help and those who are crying to serve collide because of the anointing of the Spirit, and God brings people together and stuff starts to happen. See, I think that's when spiritual growth transpires. See, you don't know God until you know God in a time of need. Oh, yeah, my wife and I talked about this a few weeks ago. There were times in our life, in our young life, we had 3 little babies. And I had a huge transition on my job, and I went from making great money to very little money and had a job. This is a terrible thing. When you have a job that you can't pay your bills with. You're going out of the house every day, but boy, what's coming in is not keeping you floating. And you're worried and you're concerned. But you give those concerns to God. You don't share them with others. They didn't have TikTok back then. I had to tell you something about my age. But all you can do is talk to God. I will tell this. I want to say it publicly. We were financially struggling and strapped. And we're just going to church, and we're giving our offering, and we're giving what God has given us, and we're sowing it. And we come home one day, and you go to the mailbox. I don't know why you go to the mailbox on Sunday. And I went to the mailbox, and somebody had come by the house and put an envelope in the house. Well, it didn't have a stamp, but it had cash in it. And boy, I will tell you, if you don't know how faith works, when God moves in your life, and you know this couldn't be anything but God, because only you and God know. God hears your prayers, and God tends to move on other people. They don't know why they're doing what they do, but they know that God's inspiring them to do something, and they do it by faith, but you get blessed. I went back in the house. I showed my wife, and we start crying. We start crying and shouting. We done left church, but church done started all over again. Because we experienced God doing something that only God can do. And you see, sometimes these days, people will get on the social platforms, and sometimes people can be cruel. And when you tell them what's going on in your life, and they don't act sensibly or with sensitivity, you're left with this void. Sometimes people can hurt you. People can be discouraging. I want to share this wisdom with you. This is out of the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verse 14. The writer says this: "For God will bring every act to judgment. Everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil." There are things about God and life. I want you to know, especially young people, you're never going to understand everything about God. And I'm 72 years old, yes, but I still don't understand everything about this life and this world that we live in. I just know I'm here. I'm here. And so I want to kind of go to the edge of the pool now, if you'll let me, and I want to step off into what I would call deep water. I'm still talking about the discipline of secrecy, but I want to show you how God does things. Look with me in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 29 and verse 29. You'll find these words. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed, they belong to us and to our sons forever, that we may observe all the words of this law. Moses says to the nation of Israel, this young nation, this group of Hebrews, there are certain things as it relates to God that are secret. There are other things that God reveals. So you have the secret will of God, you have the revealed will of God. This is theology, people. There are things that God does that everybody should know about. He made it known. There are some things God didn't intend for any of us to know, and yet they get done. The secret will of God refers to his creative power and decretive will. He will speak something, declare it, decree it, and it will happen. The secret will involves God's eternal purposes, his decisions. Those things remain private, unknown, compared to his revealed will. In God's secret will, you would find his unchanging purpose. Purposes for creation, for humanity, for this entire universe. And inside of those creative purposes, you have the absolute, always fulfilled will of God that remains hidden. We just know that God is on the throne and in control. However, when those hidden purposes of God become revealed and are disclosed, his secret will becomes his revealed will. And it's in that revealed will that we have to be careful. Moses says, if God has revealed things to us, they belong to us. It is not only our responsibility to hear those things, understand those things, apply those things, but we are responsible for transferring those things to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. We are responsible for the revealed will of God forever. It becomes our responsibility. And there are times when there are things in our heart that we ought to share with God, that we ought to release, that we ought to let go of, and yet we can't because we struggle in this world. Listen to the psalmist in the writing of the psalmist. It's an interesting passage in Psalm 44, verse 21. Would not God find this out? He knows the secrets of the heart. You see, I think it's a better thing to learn to talk to God than to pretend, well, he don't know. He don't understand. Nobody knows how I feel. Nobody's gone through what I've gone through. Nobody's where I'm at. Those are the lies that the flesh and the devil speak. But the psalmist, who is actually writing a national lament over the nation of Israel in a great time of disaster. In fact, this is a great period in Psalms 44, a great period of time in Israeli history. It's a time when the people are rallied around the temple. It's a time when the people are worshiping God and their hearts are right with God, but they get into a conflict. They get into a military conflict, and they are struggling. In fact, they're losing the battle, and the people are confounded. They don't understand. We're right with you, God. We're in a covenant relationship with you, and you promised us prosperity. You promised us that we would grow. You promised us that we would be strong. And yet here we are at the threshold of death. And God's not listening. Trouble still exists. We've been faithful. We've trusted. Where are you, God? Where are you? And so the psalmist echoes this. He makes this statement. Won't God know these things? Wouldn't God know where we're at and what we're going through? Here's the catch. Even though there's the conundrum of being a covenant people under the protection of God, and yet having difficulty with another nation and losing the battles and losing the fight, somebody in the background might say, well, is it justified to trust God if God can't respond? And somebody would immediately say, yes, justification for trusting God is always right in every situation, even if we're losing the battle. Trust in God no matter what. Why? Because His revealed will is sure. I'm His, He's mine, and no matter what. So the writer would say to them again, would not God find this out? He knows the secrets of the heart. Sometimes trouble comes because we are kidding ourselves. Somebody look up at me. Sometimes God allows trouble to come because what's truly in your heart needs to be revealed to us. The revealed will of God is our responsibility, and religion won't protect you from doubt. You need to know what you know that you know, and it needs to be sure no matter what. Listen to what Job said. The man who God picked out to get picked on, who lost his children, lost all of his money. 3 friends come by to let him know, well, some of this must be your responsibility, Job. You must have failed God somewhere, or this calamity wouldn't have come upon you. And Job says, no, it's not right. I'm right with God. I believe in God. I trust God. And Job would tell his friends, though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. No matter what happens, no matter what trouble comes, I believe in God, and I'm going to stand right here. There's nowhere else to go. Let me tell you a story, and I'm going to get out of this. I want to tell you the story about a preacher in the Old Testament. This preacher was a teenager, guys. He was a teenager when he got the call of God in his life. He was a kid. He lived during an era in Jewish history where the 10 northern tribes had already been attacked by the Assyrians and taken completely out of the northern section of Israel. They were wiped out. You have a foreign power now who occupies the northern sections of Israel, call them the 10 tribes. And they now have this oppressor who's even extended down into the 2 southern tribes, and the influence is there. And this young man, he comes to faith. He comes to a place where, this is how he put it. I'll share it with you. The word of the Lord came to me in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, the king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. The word of the Lord came to me. I heard the voice of God, and He put His words in my mouth. he comes into prominence in the nation as a teenager, having been anointed by God to speak God's word to a world, not just a community, but to an entire world that's in chaos. World powers have moved into the Middle East, taking control over northern Israel. Other countries around them are fighting for power, trying to hold on to what they have and grab some more. God tells him, speak. He says, the word of the Lord came to me. This is the second pronouncement of this phrase. I want to share it with you, and I'll tell you who it is. It came to me, and so before I was formed in the womb, I knew you. I had you in mind before your mother gave birth to you. And at this time and at this season, placing my words in your life. He lives in an era, in a time when his community, his nation is swallowed up in pride, living in disobedience and rebellion towards God, the people of God walking in spiritual blindness. And he raises up a teenager to a people who need encouragement, to people who need spiritual help from God's word. And why would he give it to a teenager? Boy, you guys ought to hold on with me. He lives in a time where a king called Manasseh is alive. It's one of the most wicked kings in the nation of Israel. In their entire history, here's a guy who built altars in the temple around the city for idol gods. He built what they called high places. These were idolatry places to worship. He set up these altars of Baal right in the temple of God. Here's a guy who worshiped the stars, who laid altars to pagan gods. He put them right in the temple. He raised up a semblance of this false god called Asherah, the Canaanite fertility god. She hung out on the top of this pole. Be with me today, Lord. Some of y'all ain't been saved that long. I promise you can look it up. 2 Kings, you'll find it. It's right there. Here's a man who offered his own son on the altar as a living sacrifice to idol gods. This preacher, this teenager, lived in an era where even the priests in the nation were corrupt and crooked and stopped preaching or teaching the Word of God. And yet here's one thing that the Scriptures tell us about him. In verse 1 of this book, it says that he was the son of Helikah, of the priests who were in Anath, in the land of Benjamin. He was the son of parents who were spiritually mature, godly people who were in the priesthood. And they raised a standard in their home and lived by it. In the midst of all of this national, international corruption and religious corruption and moral decline, they would make the statement, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord, and I can't tell you what anybody else is going to do, but we are going to serve the Lord. The young man's name is Jeremiah. The weeping preacher, they called him. He wrote a letter one day. He wrote a letter, and in this letter, he wrote it to the Jews who were in exile. And he told them, listen, guys, hold your head up. Don't listen to the prophets that are in the foreign land with you. Some of those prophets that are in the foreign land were trying to tell the people, listen, we're going to get out here real soon. God told me we're going to get out here. We're not going to be here that long. And Jeremiah said, don't listen to them. You're going to be there 70 years. While you're there, here's what I want you to do. I want you to build yourself a house. You're going to need it. Go ahead and start planting crops. Not only that, but pray for your oppressor. Pray for the people who are over you now. Pray for those people to prosper and for them to do well, and that in them doing well, maybe you would do well during the time of your captivity. Don't fight. Don't resist. And boy, did he get in trouble for that. The prophets of that land wrote back into Judah and called him a messenger of compliance and surrender. They called him a traitor for not inspiring the people to rebel. He simply told them, I have heard about the secret will of God, and I have heard about the revealed will of God. And God took his word and he put it in my mouth. Now, once it left heaven and came to me, it was my responsibility. My responsibility to understand it, apply it, and then transfer it. And so I say to you, God will not deliver quickly. God hasn't forgotten, but you need to maintain where you're at. Sometimes only you and God know. And people will hate and despise you for speaking what God revealed. You would think being a preacher was a good thing. Now I got news for you. It ain't good all the time. You can speak the truth and somebody's going to get mad with you. You can speak the truth, and I'll tell you this, I've had this over the years. Somebody would say, Pastor, I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong, Pastor. You're not doing right. Well, what is that? You was preaching about me today. Listen, I do not spend my time paying attention to folks' personal business. I'm not here to preach your problems. But if the Spirit of God pricked your heart about your life, maybe you need to take responsibility for you. Sometimes, if you are marginal in your walk with God and you've already surrendered and decided that's enough and you don't really want much more, when trouble happens and you get a little bit disoriented and discouraged because it's now focused on you, what are you going to do? Here's a young man who was thrown in prison. Here's a young man thrown in a pit, left for dead. If God doesn't move on the heart of another man to come and rescue him, he would have died in that mud pit. But God was raising somebody else up while he's over here praying and preaching. I need you to follow me this morning. Sometimes the thing boils down to this when it comes to the discipline of secrecy. It comes down to what you really believe about God. Is your faith sure? Is your faith solidly built on the revealed word of God where you are standing on it no matter what? And when trouble comes, you have the ability to tell God what's going on in your life, knowing that God will hear you. And as sure as he's working in your life, I got news for you. He's working in somebody else's. You are not by yourself. You are not alone. Remember, a house set on a hill, a light that's set on a hill. If God's building a house, if God lit your candle, it will never be hidden. It will never be hidden. See, here's what I'm asking you. And maybe I'm asking you something that only you can know privately and secretly. If your candle's not lit, ask God. Ask God. Ask God to light your candle. If you've been building your house your way, and your house is crumbling, y'all with me? If you're building your family and your family is crumbling, ask God. Ask God for his help. Ask God. Between you and God, ask Him to do what only He can do. You may find, like my daughter would tell me, you may find the man of peace showing up at your door. You don't know him, never met him, but God has raised somebody up that comes into your life, comes into your space, speaks a word, encourages you, strengthens you, helps you in this journey along the way. The discipline of secrecy is not just privacy. It's about trust. It's about faith. It's about hope. It's about deep spiritual roots.